Okay, so today, just to reiterate a bit, so today again we are talking about how the changes in diet and exercise and the routine have overall helped the participants to improve their CGM from week 1 to week 2. So we will also have participants sharing their own stories with us, and we have Swati here who will be guiding us as to the diet that she has suggested so many participants. And towards the end, we will have relaxation, mindfulness, and a few tips from Anand. So that's how we will be proceeding. I think Swati, you are right now.
Yeah.
You're in the right. Yeah.
Just 1 minute.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Then we can
Okay.
start.
Yeah, yeah. So Richa, could you brief us about CGM and a little about the train card phenomenon that you mentioned last time? If you could begin with that.
Sure, I'll do that. So,
Yeah.
as everyone knows, CGM is basically continuous glucose monitoring, where you attach a sensor to your arm and it basically takes your interstitial fluid glucose levels and it takes a reading every 15 minutes. I believe it depends on the brand that you are using, but approximately every 15 minutes, a reading is taken, and then at the end of 1 week and at the end of 2 weeks, you have a report which shows you basically how your sugar levels have changed through the day. Um, so next slide, Swati. So basically, this is what it looks like. There's a tiny sensor. So in our case, the Abbott sensor we have attached to the arm, but otherwise you can attach it anywhere. And the reader basically what shows you your glucose report, your reading. So basically, the main benefit of a CGM is it shows you exactly what your glucose levels are through the day and how it's changing with different scenarios. It shows you what your glucose level is at a time where you are not going to actually physically check your glucose levels, like in the middle of the night, which is a time where many people have faced hypoglycemia, or how different food items change your glucose levels. It will show you how after a lack of a night of low sleep, how your sugar levels can rise in the morning. So basically, it just helps you really understand how your sugar readings fluctuate and how they change with your day-to-day routine without having to prick yourself that often.
Okay. Thank you, Richa. And then this is the lag that you had explained to us before. So for the participants, if you could just repeat how the
Sure.
blood sugar levels and the interstitial sugar levels they differ. So that is a very vivid and a good example to share. So yeah, go ahead, please.
Sure, I'll do that. So
Yeah.
basically, what is recorded in the CGM is not your blood glucose, it's the interstitial fluid glucose levels. So during the day, during all your routine activities, there is not much of a difference between your blood sugar and your interstitial fluid or your sensor glucose levels. But after big events like how they depicted after eating, after your exercise and your medication, there are a lot of. One second, I'm sorry, there is some echo. Yeah. So basically, the explanation for this is that the whatever activity you are doing first affects your blood glucose levels, and then it will affect your sensor glucose levels. So you can imagine that the blood glucose levels are the front of your cart, and the sensor glucose is the last cart of your train, the last carriage of your train. So, like it's explained, because the glucose enters the bloodstream first, and then the extra glucose will enter into your interstitial fluid levels. So that is why the blood glucose will always be affected first, whether it is increase or decrease. So that's how it is depicted as a train. So during the day, there are very small changes in both the levels because the activity does not change your blood sugar levels as much. But during a huge event like eating food, it will cause a much bigger spike in your blood sugar levels, due to which the blood glucose, which is in the front cart, will always get affected first. And that is the point where there will be a much larger difference between your sensor glucose and your blood glucose levels. And then once that food is settled down and it goes into the interstitial fluid levels, the sensor glucose or your interstitial fluid levels will be higher than your blood glucose because at that time the blood glucose has stabilized. all the extra sugar has either been absorbed by the cells or has gone into the interstitial fluid. So the difference will be seen in the sensor glucose at that time. And this happens usually with food, with medication, and with exercise. So after food, the blood glucose will be higher. After the exercise, the sensor glucose will be higher. Till, of course, it stabilizes very quickly. And again, the change is very less. The difference is very little between the two values.
Maybe Richa, worth pointing out that at least they do, the rough thumb rule is that this lag
Yeah.
between blood glucose and sensor glucose is roughly of the order of up to 10 minutes.
Up to 10 minutes, yes. Oh, sorry, I did not mention that. So it usually does depend on the monitor that you are using, but I believe with the Abbott one that we are using, it is approximately 5 minutes is the lag phase. So it's not much. So basically, yeah, the objective of using CGM is to basically help you understand your sugar levels, as I explained, and to show you how each activity can affect your sugar levels. Also, it basically using it every day can help you avoid certain circumstances like hypoglycemia, like I believe we did see in some cases, which would probably be mentioned later today. So, there are basically many advantages to using it. And the main point is that you don't have to prick yourself as often as you would when doing intense testing to otherwise understand these fluctuations in sugar levels.
Yeah, thank you, Richa, for that. That was really informative and that was very useful. So Swati, now over to you. We can go to the graph, Swati, because I think that will be more important for the participants to understand. Yeah, we can go ahead to this. Yes, please. Swati, can you take over from here?
Yes, I will take it over from here.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
for everybody who has gone through the CGM entire exercise, the nutrition exercise was broken into two parts, where we first did a session after the first week, and then we did another session after the second week. So the major changes that we made was primarily a good focus on the amount of carbohydrates that were taken, whether it was change in the portion size or the type of carbohydrates that you're taking, combination with other high protein items, increase in the amount of fiber in the form of vegetables, fruits, in the form of cooked fiber, in the form of raw fiber. All these changes were made person to person, because each person was having such a unique eating pattern, which had an influence on the of culture, the kind of habits they had, their work schedules, their sleep timings. All of that was taken into consideration, and we made small changes. These weren't very big changes. I would say we made probably 25 to 30% tweaking in their existing eating pattern. What we made available was a wider choice of food, rather than sticking to only one particular type, and giving them a list of low glycemic index foods. Apart from that, a lot of focus was put on understanding how much time is spent in rest, hence trying to determine what kind of sleep quality they were enjoying, and increase in the intake of micronutrients. So while all of this was going on, we could see a definite change in their I'll go to the graphs. So if you see, all of you have read the reports. So if you see, we have these different people: Charlie, Max, Pooja. There is Simran and Raj also, if you can see. So, so in the first week, we saw this one, Pooja and Simran. They were really having a big time, very tough time managing their hypoglycemia that happened in the times when they were not awake. That was the biggest concern for us, where they would not experience those symptoms, and that was continuously happening. Now, after the 7th day, with small changes, like I mentioned in the earlier slide, with very small changes according to their appetite, we made these simple changes in their lifestyle as well as in their diet pattern, whereby the next week we could see a quite a significant change, and that made them more comfortable also. The fact that they saw the second part of the report, it was so relaxing for them. At the same time, if you look at the time above target readings, for people who were experiencing huge jumps in their sugar levels, with again small changes, portion control, which is where I would really want to focus on, that the way we divide our portions, the amount of time you spend on chewing your food, the kind of combinations that, like, there was a simple combination that was suggested, that if you feel like eating a wheat roti and you cannot do without it, if you're finding it difficult to eat a millet roti or a bhakri, the best thing to do is to combine it with a protein. So 3 parts of wheat and 1 part of besan along with little bit of milk. All of this completely changes the protein nature of the roti, and it still works in your favor. Or something as simple as introducing a mid meal which is high in protein, which could be a glass of milk or it could be an egg before between your lunch and dinner. Again, made a huge difference to the sugar spikes that were happening after dinner. So the simple changes, and they were like totally easily, some of them in fact loved it. So if you see the time over target for Max, if you see that it was all, the first week was really, you can see 79%, there was so many jumps, but the second week it fell down to, almost more than half, and you can see it at 31%. Now there was one thing that happened in case of Aarti. If you see, the first week for Aarti was pretty good, but then she was eating out. It was the 26th January a weekend, but in a way it was quite a learning for her also, that okay, this is the kind of spike I will see if I've not eaten for a long time and then I suddenly go and eat a bigger meal. So that spike was low. So that is, see, every reading of CGM I feel is a learning by itself. You are, it's like looking at your mirror. Nothing is hidden over here. So it's a good learning that you can actually learn how to balance your carbohydrate intake, your protein intake, the time, the portion, everything. Like for in case of one participant, what we did was we brought down the carbohydrate intake to half in that one particular meal. But like for example, he was having a bakri, so that was brought down to half. Now what? So now it was said that how can I have half a bakri when I'm used to having one bakri? So the simple technique that he changed was, he separated that one layer of bakri from the other. So now he had one thin bakri and he had a slightly thicker bakri. So consumption of dal and vegetable went up slightly, and the amount of bites he had was still remained the same. And there was a complete. I mean, we could compromise on the carbohydrate easily by 50%. So these small changes were done, and there we could see a lot of difference in the satiety level. There was a drop in weight also, mind you. In few participants, we have seen a drop in weight also. So I think this was a wonderful exercise as far as all the participants we have seen. So if you look at the next slide.
Swati, can I just if you can just kindly go back to the earlier slide? Maybe for any of our participants, if they don't know the definition of time below target and time above target, can you just
So time above target is so we have this range from 70 to 180. 180. If you open your report, there is a range. So that is the amount of sugar that is permitted in the bloodstream during that time. So now when we say time above target, this is the percentage that the sugar has really gone up beyond 180, and time below target where the sugar has dropped below 70. Those, if you look at your report, those peaks, yellow peaks, and the red crest that you can see, the red crests are the time below target, and that is the hypoglycemic phase, and the yellow peaks that were seen, they were the time above target.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
So
Swati. So, just one thing that I want to ask you is, so time in range, is it what is important, and is that what we are looking at?
exactly. So this is where we are. The next
Yeah,
slide is a
yeah.
complete. So we've taken again these 6 participants that we have as a comparison. If you see, people who are doing better are doing better than better. So let's say in case of Charlie, he was he was doing very well. 96% is a fantastic score. I think, Richa, we can call it above 80, everything we can call them good participants, right?
I think the thumb rule is above 75% time.
About 75%. So, in the first participant, it was 96%, which now becomes 100%. We were little concerned about our second participant, Max, who was just at 21%. But look at the leap he has taken in the second week with small changes from 21 to directly 59. So I'm sure that, if the participants go on, sticking to these changes and making them better, again, this time and target is going to improve for them. And that will totally reflect on their HbA1c. Again, the Pooja, if you see only now, the fourth participant, Aarti, has shown a drop in time and target, simply for the reason because that we were talking about the weekend eating, and that's the reason the average has really come down. But like I said, this is all a part of that learning about how exactly your food and your blood chemistry is going to change with respect to the consumption patterns. And otherwise, if you see, there is in case of, again, Raj also, or in Simran also. So Raj and Aarti were the ones who learned that how exactly they can alter their eating pattern, and they were also testing. Some of them were testing also. Like in case of Aarti, she was actually testing if she eats a certain food at one given point after a long gap in a meal, what was the result? And that's what we saw. Now she has taken that as a learning, and we have made changes that in case you are eating so and so food at this particular time, what should be the accompanying food, how much should be the gap between the following meals and the previous meals, and what should be the physical activity so as to take care of this carbohydrate load. But by and large, if you ask me, I just enjoyed this exercise because there was so much to look at in each person's lifestyle and their eating habits. And sitting right there, we could give them at least 4 to 5 ways of dealing with the same problem. It was a lovely exercise.
Indeed, Swati, it was a great exercise to be interacting with the participants.
Two breathing exercises that I have for you all. So wherever we are, let's just quickly sit down. Yes, please. Yes.
Sorry, I feel like every time I feel I am at least okay if we have to extend by 10 minutes. Okay.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. That's very nice to know. Okay. So let's all have a seat wherever. Sir, are you saying something, Anand sir? No, right? Okay, everybody, please sit down. If you're standing, just grab a chair or something and make sure you're sitting down. And we're going to remove our glasses for this exercise. Let's be completely grounded and let's have as less body weight and things on our body as much as possible. So the first exercise, breathing exercise that we're going to do is called as deep breathing exercise. And it is necessary for firstly two reasons. Let me give you before we jump right into it. So it brings about a sense of mindfulness in you. And secondly, if some of you attended Anand sir's yoga session yesterday, we learned a lot of insights about the importance of breathing here. So just like how our functioning of the internal organs affects the way we breathe, if we have a controlled kind of breathing, it is also going to affect the way our internal organs function. And if we practice this for longer period of time, longer durations of time, it is going to start impacting our internal organs as well. So we're going to jump right into it, and we're going to do an exercise called as deep breathing exercise. So let's all close our eyes, hold our hands up in a mudra like this with the help of your index finger and your thumb. Place it on your thighs and close your eyes and just relax and follow my instructions. I'm going to give you all a few instructions, and until then, just continue to inhale and exhale because we need our breathing rate to come back to normal for this exercise. So in the first one, our first deep breathing exercise is going to be in the ratio of 1:1, which is you're going to inhale in 4 counts and exhale in 4 counts. So I'm going to give you 4 claps like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to inhale in all these 4 counts and 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, exhale in these 4 counts. So as I'm giving these counts, make sure our breathing is continuous and there is no breakage. So make sure you're taking in a lot of breath and you're taking it slowly. All right, so if our breathing rate has returned back to normal, let us start with breathing exercise. We'll do a first round and then you all can tell me how you're feeling, if it's feeling okay. Okay, so inhale and exhale, and as you exhale, we're going to begin. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we did 2 rounds of these. We're going to do a few more rounds of this wherein we take in 4 counts and exhale in 4 counts. And then we're going to do a few rounds of where we inhale in 4 counts and exhale in 8 counts. Okay, so make sure you take in a lot of breath there. Let's start. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 more rounds of this. As you're doing so, try to avoid any thoughts that are coming to your mind and only bring all your attention to your breathing. Let's go once again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Keep your eyes closed. We're now going to begin with inhaling in 4 counts and exhaling in 4 counts. So as you've done 4 seconds, you're going to realize that if you have to breathe out in 8 seconds, you're going to need to take in a lot of breath. Now, there was another important function of this exercise, which I had kept to tell you in the later part of it, which is now that deep breathing is one exercise which is going to strengthen your lungs capacity. And especially in the periods like COVID period, there is a great need to have a strong respiratory system. So an exercise of deep breathing is going to strengthen your lungs to a very good capacity. So let's move ahead. Well, we inhale in 4 counts and exhale in 8 counts. Let us start. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so this was just the first round that we did. Did anyone experience any sort of a difficulty in breathing out in 8 counts? You can let me know. We'll do it once again. But before that, you can let me know if there was a difficulty. No? Okay, sure. Let's continue. Once again, I'm sorry there's a car around me. I'm really sorry if it's disturbing you. But let's again try to bring all our attention to our breath and focus on nothing but your breathing. And let's begin as we close our eyes and start. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're going to do this once again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Lovely, you guys. Let's do it once again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Last round. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And relax. Continue to keep your eyes closed and continue to breathe normally. So this exercise was not just to increase the capacity of our lungs, but it was also a reminder that if anywhere in this exercise you felt restless, you felt the need to open your eyes, this is just a reminder to slow down by the end of the day, to take just a few minutes to close your eyes and sit down in one place and just concentrate on your body or on your breathing. This is your body's way of telling you that there is some portion of the day that you need to take out for relaxation. We can all open our eyes. Yes, thank you for being such wonderful participants.